was sitting in my hotel room in Seattle when my phone buzzed with a voice message from my cousin Marcus. I pressed play expecting a simple hello. Instead, what I heard made my blood run cold. "Hey Diane, your mom told everyone at the reunion today that you were too ashamed to show your face. She said you lost your job and you're living in some basement apartment now. She said you're too embarrassed to see the family. That's really rough. We're all here for you if you need anything, okay?" I replayed the message 3 times, hoping I'd misheard. But no. My mother, Patricia Chen, had just told my entire extended family that I was a complete failure. The thing is, none of it was true. I hadn't lost my job. I was an investigative journalist for a major news network, and for the past 3 weeks, I'd been working undercover on the biggest story of my career. I was exhausted and stressed, but I was about to expose a massive corporate fraud on national television. Tonight, my phone was blowing up with notifications. 47 missed calls and dozens of text messages from relatives I barely talked to anymore. All of them pitied me. All of them believed my mother's lies. I looked at the time on my phone. It was 5:45 p.m. In 15 minutes, my investigative report would air on CBS Evening News. My mother had no idea what was about to happen. At exactly 6 p.m., I turned on the television. My hands were shaking as the CBS Evening News logo appeared on screen. The news anchor's face was serious as she introduced the top story. "Tonight we bring you an exclusive investigation. Journalist Diane Chen spent 3 weeks undercover, exposing Techvance Industries' shocking $400 million embezzlement scheme that affected thousands of employees and investors." Then my face filled the screen. I was standing in front of Techvance headquarters, holding a microphone, looking professional and confident. The complete opposite of the failure my mother had described. The report showed everything. My interviews with brave whistleblowers who risked their careers to speak out. The financial documents I'd uncovered that proved years of fraud. The moment I confronted the CEO with undeniable evidence and watched his face go pale, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Message after message flooded in. Marcus texted, "Diane, you're on TV. You're the journalist who broke the Techvance story. This is huge." Aunt Gloria called. I didn't answer. Uncle Raymond sent a text. "Your mother told us you lost your job and were struggling. But you're on national news. What's going on?" Cousin Jessica wrote, "Why would your mom lie like that?" I sat frozen on the hotel bed, watching my phone light up over and over. My entire family had spent the afternoon at the reunion feeling sorry for me, probably offering to help my mother with money for her struggling daughter. All based on complete lies. The calls kept coming. My mother's name flashed on my screen 17 times in 20 minutes. I finally answered on the 18th call, bracing myself. "You should have told me." Her voice was so shrill I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You made me look like a complete fool in front of everyone." I waited for an apology, for some kind of explanation, for her to take responsibility. But it never came. "Mom, you told the entire family I lost my job. You said I was living in a basement apartment. You said I was too ashamed to show my face. None of that was true. Why would you say those things? I was worried about you. You never call me back. You're always so secretive about your work. What was I supposed to think? You could have just said you didn't know what I was doing," I said, trying to stay calm. "You didn't have to invent lies about me being a failure." "Well, the family was asking questions, Diane. They wanted to know where you were. I had to say something. How was I supposed to know you were working on some secret investigation? You never tell me anything." My chest tightened. She was doing it again, twisting everything to make herself the victim. "You could have said, Diane is busy with work and couldn't make it. That's the truth. Instead, you made up an entire story about me losing everything and being too embarrassed to face anyone. So now I'm the bad guy. After everything I've done for you. I'm your mother, Diane." Then she hung up on me. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that phone call over and over. But it wasn't just that conversation that kept me awake. It was the memories flooding back. I opened my phone and scrolled through the family group chat. What I saw made me feel sick. Aunt Gloria had posted at 11:30 p.m. "Patricia, you told us Diane lost her job and was struggling with money. But she's a successful investigative journalist. Why would you say those things?" Uncle Raymond posted right after. "I gave Patricia $500 last month. She said it was to help Diane pay rent because Diane was too proud to ask for help herself. Where did that money go?" My heart stopped. Uncle Raymond gave my mother money. For me. Then cousin Jessica posted. "My mom told me last year that Diane dropped out of college and never finished her degree. But I just looked her up online. She has a master's degree from Columbia University. Patricia, why did you lie?" Other family members started chiming in, comparing the different stories my mother had told them about me. And that's when I realized this was much bigger than one lie at one reunion. Aunt Gloria. "Wait. Patricia told me 6 months ago that Diane was in rehab for drug problems. I've been praying for her recovery." Uncle Raymond. "She told me Diane had a gambling addiction and owed money to dangerous people. That's why I sent the $500. Different lies. Told to different people. All designed to make my mother look like a suffering, supportive parent dealing with a troubled daughter. I drove back to Portland the next morning. The 3-hour drive from Seattle gave me too much time to think. Too much time to remember all the times my mother had done things like this before. When I was 16, my mother told Aunt Gloria that I'd been suspended from school for cheating on a major exam. It wasn't true. I'd never cheated on anything. But at the next family dinner, I sat there being lectured about honesty and integrity while my mother nodded sadly, playing the concerned parent. When I was 19 and living in the college dorms, my mother somehow got my roommate's parents' phone number. She called them and said I was using drugs and needed an intervention. They organized a whole meeting. I had to take a drug test to prove I was clean. My mother later said she must have misunderstood something I'd told her. When I was 23, my mother told my boyfriend that I'd gotten pregnant and had an abortion without telling him. We broke up 2 days later. When I confronted her, she claimed she was just concerned about our relationship and thought he should know the truth. Except it wasn't the truth. None of it was true. I'd always made excuses for her behavior. She was stressed. She was worried. She misunderstood. But now, seeing the family group chat explode with all her different lies about me, I couldn't pretend anymore. My mother was a liar. And I'd been her favorite target for my entire life. I arrived in Portland around noon and drove straight to her house. My mother wasn't home when I arrived. Her car was gone from the driveway, and the house was quiet. My stepfather Leonard was still at work. I still had a key from years ago, so I let myself in. I went straight to the kitchen and opened the junk drawer where my mother kept random things. I dug through old receipts, rubber bands, and loose keys until I found what I was looking for. A small silver key with a red plastic tag attached. The tag said, "Secure Space Storage, Unit 247. 3 years ago, my mother rented a storage unit. When I asked why, she got defensive and told me to mind my own business. Later, she claimed it was just furniture from my grandmother's estate. But that never made sense. My grandmother had lived in a tiny apartment and owned almost nothing when she died. I'd been suspicious back then, but I dropped it. I shouldn't have. I drove across town to the Secure Space facility. My hands were sweating as I walked down the long hallway of storage units. When I reached number 247, I unlocked it and rolled up the metal door. What I saw inside made my stomach drop. Designer purses lined up on shelves. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Prada. At least 20 of them, most still with price tags attached. Stacks of jewelry boxes. Electronics still sealed in their original packaging. Gaming systems, laptops, tablets, phones. Bundles of gift cards held together with rubber bands. And in the corner, a large plastic bin overflowing with papers. I recognized some of these things immediately. 5 years ago, my mother reported a burglary. She said thieves had broken in and stolen thousands of dollars worth of belongings while she and Leonard were on vacation. I stood in that storage unit, staring at everything my mother had claimed was stolen. My mind was racing as I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every purse, every piece of jewelry, every box of electronics. My hands shook, but my training as an investigative journalist kicked in. Document everything. Get evidence. Stay focused. I opened the plastic bin in the corner. Inside were insurance claim forms from 5 years ago, police reports about the burglary, and receipts showing that my mother had rented this storage unit 2 weeks before she reported the theft. She'd planned the whole thing. She hid her expensive belongings here, reported them stolen, collected $40,000 from the insurance company, and kept everything. That was insurance fraud. Serious crime. I was photographing the last stack of papers when I heard a car door slam outside. My heart jumped into my throat. I quickly locked the storage unit and walked toward my car, trying to look casual. It was just another customer accessing their unit. They didn't even glance at me. But my pulse was pounding in my ears. I sat in my car for several minutes, trying to calm down and think clearly. My mother wasn't just someone who told lies to make herself look good. She was actively committing crimes, stealing from insurance companies. And if she'd done that, what else had she done? I thought about Uncle Raymond's $500. About the other money family members had probably given her over the years, thinking they were helping me. I needed to talk to Leonard. Right away. I drove straight to Leonard's office downtown. He worked as an accountant for a small firm. The receptionist, Mrs. Palmer, knew me and smiled when I walked in. "Diane, we all watched you on the news last night. That investigation was incredible." "Thanks, Mrs. Palmer. Is Leonard available?" "It's important." "He's in his office." "Go right ahead, sweetie." I knocked on Leonard's door. When he looked up from his computer and saw my face, his smile disappeared. He could tell something was very wrong. "Diane, what happened?" I closed the door behind me and sat down. "Leonard, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you know about the storage unit?" His face went blank. "What storage unit?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the pictures. His eyes grew wider with each photo. The designer purses, the jewelry, the electronics still in their boxes. When I got to the insurance documents proving everything had been hidden before the burglary, he went pale. "She told the insurance company all these things were stolen," I said quietly. "But she hid them first. Leonard, this is fraud." He sat back in his chair like I'd physically pushed him. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, with shaking hands, he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "I found something last month," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to do about it. I was too scared to confront her. He handed me the folder. Inside were credit card statements. 4 different cards, all in Leonard's name. All maxed out. The combined debt was over $60,000. "I didn't open these accounts," Leonard said. Leonard's hands trembled as he pointed to the credit card statements. "I found these by accident when I was organizing our financial files. I'd never seen them before. When I asked Patricia about them, she looked me straight in the eye and said I must have forgotten opening them. She said I was getting forgetful in my old age and maybe I should see a doctor." His voice cracked. "She made me doubt myself, Diane. For a few days, I actually wondered if I was losing my memory. I'm 68 years old. What if I really was forgetting things?" "You're not forgetting anything," I said firmly. "She opened these cards in your name without telling you. That's identity theft." Leonard pulled out another document from the folder. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. "There's more. She took out a second mortgage on our house. $20,000. I only found out when the bank called last week asking why we'd missed a payment." I stared at the mortgage documents, feeling sick. "Did you know she was doing this?" "No." I asked her where the money went. She said we used it for home repairs. He laughed bitterly. But we haven't done any repairs, Diane. Not a single one. The money is just gone. Leonard, she's been stealing from you for years. I know. His eyes filled with tears. I'm supposed to retire next year. I've been saving my whole life for retirement. But now our house is at risk. Our credit is destroyed. I have $60,000 in credit card debt I didn't even know existed. How do I start over at 68? I reached across the desk and took his hand. We're going to figure this out together. I promise. Leonard and I sat in his office for 2 hours, going through every document he had. The credit cards opened in his name. The second mortgage. The insurance fraud I'd discovered in the storage unit. And then Leonard showed me bank statements that revealed even more. Look at this, he said, pointing to regular withdrawals from their joint account. 500 here, 800 there, 1,000 here. When I asked Patricia about these, she always had explanations. She said the car needed repairs, or she bought groceries, or she paid for medical bills. But I never saw any receipts. I added up the withdrawals in my head. Over the past 2 years alone, more than $30,000 had disappeared from their account in small amounts. Where did it all go? Leonard asked helplessly. I thought about the storage unit full of designer purses and expensive electronics. I think I know. We kept digging. Leonard pulled up old emails and found correspondence with collection agencies for debts he didn't know existed. Credit card companies threatening legal action. Medical bills for treatments that never happened. How did I not see this? Leonard asked, his voice breaking. I'm an accountant. This is literally what I do for a living. How did she hide all of this from me? Because you trusted her, I said. And she took advantage of that trust. Leonard, there's something else you need to know. I told him about the family group chat. About Uncle Raymond's $500. About Aunt Gloria's money for my fake rehab. About all the lies my mother had told different family members. Collecting money by claiming I was in trouble. Leonard put his head in his hands. She's been running scams on everyone. Not just me. Your whole family. I think it's even bigger than that, I said quietly. That night, I went back to my apartment and did what I do best as a journalist. I investigated my own mother. I created a fake Facebook profile using a stock photo and a common name. Then I started searching for my mother's social media accounts. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. My mother was extremely active in online support groups. Groups for mothers with difficult daughters. Groups for people dealing with family estrangement. Groups for parents of adult children with addiction problems. Groups for survivors of child abuse. Except in these groups, she claimed to be the victim of abuse from her adult child. Me. I started reading through her posts going back years. My hands shook as I scrolled. 4 months ago, my daughter called CPS on me with false accusations. She's trying to destroy my reputation because I refused to give her money for drugs. I'm terrified. How do I protect myself legally? I'd never called CPS. I'd never asked her for drug money. I didn't even use drugs. 6 months ago. How do you cope with daughters who steal from you? Mine has taken jewelry and electronics from my home and pawned them. I have proof, but I'm afraid to press charges because she's my child. I'd never stolen from her. Ever. A year ago, my daughter was arrested for assault. I had to bail her out. She's been violent since she was a teenager. I'm afraid of her, but she's my daughter. What do I do? I'd never been arrested. I'd never been violent. These were complete lies. Post after post stretching back years. In every single one, my mother painted herself as a suffering, victimized parent dealing with a dangerous, troubled daughter. And hundreds of strangers believed her. I kept scrolling through my mother's posts, and the lies got worse. She'd created this entire fictional version of me. A drug addict, a thief, a violent criminal who abused her. People in the comments sent her sympathy and support. Stay strong, Mama. You're doing your best. Cut her off. You don't deserve this abuse. Have you tried getting a restraining order? Some people even sent her money. I found posts where she'd linked to her PayPal account, asking for help with legal fees, or money to replace what my daughter stole. The comments showed that people had donated. $10 here, $20 there. It added up. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. My mother had started a blog 2 years ago called A Mother's Journey, Surviving Family Abandonment. Clicked on it. The blog had hundreds of followers. In it, my mother wrote long, detailed posts about her terrible daughter who had abandoned her, stolen from her, abused her, and turned the family against her. The posts were written so convincingly, so emotionally, that even I almost believed them for a second. Except none of it was true. At the bottom of each blog post was a donation button. Support my healing journey, it said. People had been donating to her for 2 years. I was about to close the browser when something in one of her older posts caught my eye. She mentioned having 2 daughters who both turned against me. 2 daughters. I was an only child. I'd never had a sister. My mother had only been married twice. First to my father, then to Leonard. There were no other children. So who was this other daughter she kept mentioning in her old posts? I spent the next several hours digging through public records, using every investigative tool I had access to as a journalist. I searched for my mother's marriage history, looking for anything I might have missed. That's when I found it. Before she married my father, my mother had been married to someone else, a man named David Morrison. They got married when my mother was 19 and divorced when she was 24. I'd never known about this marriage. I searched for David Morrison and found that he'd had a daughter from a previous relationship. A daughter he'd raised with my mother during their 5-year marriage. Her name was Rachel Morrison. I found Rachel's current information through various databases. She was 40 years old now. But something was strange. 12 years ago, she'd legally changed her last name from Morrison to Winters. Why would someone change their name? I found her address in Asheville, North Carolina. I found her phone number. My heart was pounding as I stared at it on my screen. It was 2:30 in the morning in Portland, which meant it was 5:30 a.m. in North Carolina. Too early to call. But I couldn't wait. I had to know who this woman was and why my mother had never told me about her. I took a deep breath and dialed the number. The phone rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice, thick with sleep, answered. "Hello. Is this Rachel Winters?" Who's asking? My name is Diane Chen. I think Patricia Chen might have been your stepmother. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke, and her voice was cold. "Did Patricia die?" "No, she's alive." "Why? Then why are you calling me?" I explained as quickly as I could. How I'd found her name in my mother's old posts. How my mother had mentioned having 2 daughters. How I'd never known Rachel existed until tonight. Rachel was quiet while I talked. When I finished, she laughed, but it was a bitter, painful sound. "Oh my God," she said. "She did it again. She found another daughter to destroy. I'm so sorry, Diane. I should have warned you, but I thought if I just disappeared, she'd leave everyone else alone." "What do you mean?" "Yes. Patricia was my stepmother from the time I was 6 until I turned 18. My dad married her, and for those 12 years she made my life hell. She lied about me constantly. Told my teachers I had learning disabilities I didn't have. Told neighbors I was a troubled kid. By the time I was in high school, she was telling everyone I was doing drugs, getting in trouble, failing school. None of it was true." My chest tightened. "She's doing the same thing to me." "I know," Rachel said softly. "That's her pattern. She picks a daughter, or someone who fills that role, and she slowly destroys that person's reputation. She tells different lies to different people, so no one can compare notes until it's too late. Why does she do it? I don't know. I spent years in therapy trying to understand. My therapist said she probably has some kind of personality disorder. She needs to be the victim or the hero in every story, and she creates drama to make that happen. I thought about the storage unit, the credit cards, the money collected from family members. Rachel, it's not just lies. She's stealing too. From her husband, from family members, from insurance companies. Rachel sighed. That doesn't surprise me. Listen, I think we need to meet in person. Can you come to Asheville? I didn't hesitate. I'll be there tomorrow. I booked a flight for later that morning and tried to sleep for a few hours, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. At 6 a.m., I gave up and started packing a bag. My phone rang. It was Leonard. Diane, your mother just left the house. She took 2 suitcases. When I asked where she was going, she said she was visiting her cousin in Seattle for a few days. But Diane, she doesn't have a cousin in Seattle. She's running, I said. She knows we're on to her. What do I do? Don't do anything yet. Let her think she's getting away with it. I'm flying to North Carolina today to meet someone who might help us understand what we're dealing with. I'll call you tonight. I hung up and finished packing. Before I left for the airport, I sent a message to the family group chat. I'm investigating Mom's lies. Please don't confront her yet. I'll explain everything soon. Marcus responded immediately. What's going on? I'll tell you everything when I get back. Just trust me. The flight to Asheville felt like the longest 5 hours of my life. I kept thinking about Rachel and what she'd said, that my mother had done this before, that there was a pattern, that I wasn't crazy or imagining things. When the plane finally landed, I grabbed my bag and headed outside. A woman with short dark hair was waiting by a gray Honda. She was tall and thin, with tired eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Diane, she called out. I walked over to her. Rachel. She nodded. Get in. We have a lot to talk about. Rachel drove us to a small coffee shop on the edge of town. It was quiet inside, with only a few other customers. We ordered drinks and sat in a corner booth where no one could overhear us. For the first hour we just talked, comparing stories. Every lie my mother had told about me, Rachel had experienced something similar years before. Every manipulation, every twisted story, every moment of feeling crazy, Rachel understood all of it. The worst part, Rachel said, stirring her coffee slowly, is that even now, 12 years after cutting her off completely, I still sometimes doubt myself. I wonder if maybe I'm remembering things wrong. If maybe I really was a difficult teenager and I just don't want to admit it. That's exactly how I feel, I said. My voice cracked. Like maybe I'm the problem and I'm making her look bad by talking about it. You're not the problem. I'm not the problem. Patricia is. Rachel looked at me with intensity. After I finally escaped her, I spent years in therapy trying to understand what happened to me. My therapist said Patricia shows signs of a factitious disorder mixed with narcissistic personality traits. Do you know what that means? I shook my head. It means she creates false narratives where she's either the hero or the victim because it gives her attention and control. The lying isn't random or impulsive. Strategic. She knows exactly what she's doing. I thought about the storage unit full of stolen items. The credit cards opened in Leonard's name. The money collected from relatives using my fake problems. She's also been stealing. From everyone. Rachel nodded grimly. That doesn't surprise me at all. Can I show you something? She pulled out her phone. Rachel scrolled through her photo gallery until she found what she was looking for. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a photograph of a medical document. It was a psychiatric evaluation from Mountain View Hospital, dated 13 years ago. According to the document, Rachel Morrison had been admitted for violent behavior and severe delusions. It recommended long-term psychiatric care and medication. I've never been in a psychiatric hospital, Rachel said quietly. That document is completely fake. But my mother showed it to my fiancé 13 years ago when I was 27. She told him I was dangerous and unstable. She said I'd attacked her multiple times and she was afraid for her safety. I stared at the document. It looked completely real. Official hospital letterhead. A doctor's signature, detailed medical terminology. How did she make this? I have no idea. But it was convincing enough that my fiancé broke off our engagement the next day. His family thought I was dangerous. After we broke up, I was devastated. That's when I started digging into Patricia's financial life. Rachel pulled up another photo. That's when I discovered she'd been collecting disability benefits in my name for 7 years. She told the Social Security office that I was mentally incapacitated and couldn't work. She was getting monthly checks. That's fraud. I know. I went to the police with everything I'd found. They investigated, and Patricia had to pay back the money, almost $30,000. But she claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Said she'd filled out the wrong forms by accident. They believed her and didn't press charges. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. That's when I realized I had to disappear. I legally changed my name from Morrison to Winters. I moved across the country. I cut off everyone who knew Patricia. I thought if I just erased myself from her life, Rachel continued, she'd have nothing left to lie about. I thought she'd stop. But I was wrong. She looked at me with guilt in her eyes. She just found a new daughter to destroy. I'm so sorry, Diane. I should have tried to warn you somehow. I reached across the table and took her hand. You were protecting yourself. You survived. That's what matters. But you're going through the same nightmare I went through. And I could have prevented it. No, I said firmly. You couldn't have. If you tried to contact me back then, she would have told me you were crazy. She would have shown me that fake psychiatric evaluation. I would have believed her over you. Just like everyone else did. Rachel wiped her eyes. You're probably right. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Rachel asked, what are you going to do now? Are you going to cut her off like I did? I thought about Leonard, who'd worked his whole life and was now facing financial ruin at 68. I thought about Uncle Raymond's $500. About Aunt Gloria's money for my fake rehab. About all the family members who'd been manipulated and stolen from. No, I said. I'm not going to run and hide. I'm going to expose her. Publicly. With evidence that can't be denied. Rachel's eyes widened. Diane, that's dangerous. When Patricia feels cornered, she gets vicious. She'll come after you harder than ever. Let her try. I'm an investigative journalist. Exposing fraud is literally my job. And she's not going to destroy anyone else's life. Rachel studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. Then I'm going to help you. What do you need? Over the next 2 days, Rachel and I built a case against my mother. We worked from her dining room table, spreading out documents, comparing timelines, and organizing evidence. Rachel had kept everything from her years with Patricia. Letters my mother had written making false accusations. Emails where she'd lied to family members about Rachel. Copies of the disability fraud paperwork. The fake psychiatric evaluation. Even old report cards from Rachel's school years, proving she'd been a good student despite Patricia's claims that she was failing. I kept all of this because I was afraid she'd come after me again someday, Rachel explained. I needed proof that I was telling the truth. I added my evidence to the pile. Photos of the storage unit and the insurance claim forms. Screenshots of my mother's Facebook posts and blog entries. Bank statements showing the money Leonard had lost. Messages from family members about the money they'd given my mother to help me. Together, we had documentation spanning more than 20 years of Patricia's lies and fraud. There's something else you should know, Rachel said on the second evening. Patricia did this to other people too. Not just us. What do you mean? When I was 17, right before I graduated high school, Patricia's mother, your grandmother, pulled me aside at a family gathering. She said, "Be careful with my daughter. She needs to make people hurt." I don't know why, but she does. I barely remembered my grandmother. She died when I was 10. My mother always said her mother was mentally ill and abusive. That's why we rarely visited her. Rachel shook her head. Your grandmother wasn't mentally ill. I met her several times before she died. She was kind and completely rational. But she was terrified of Patricia. Rachel made some calls over the next few hours. She contacted 3 other women who'd known Patricia years ago and had their own stories to tell. The first was Jennifer Hayes, a woman who'd worked with my mother 15 years ago at an insurance office. Patricia accused me of stealing from the company, Jennifer told us over speakerphone. She planted evidence in my desk and reported me to management. I was fired and couldn't get another job in the industry for years. It destroyed my career. The second was Susan Park, who'd lived next door to Patricia and Leonard 8 years ago. Patricia called Child Protective Services on me multiple times, claiming I was abusing my kids. I wasn't. The investigations were humiliating and traumatic for my family. We had to move just to get away from her. The third was Margaret Chen, Patricia's own cousin. She told me she had cancer 3 years ago. I gave her $10,000 to help with medical bills. But she never had cancer. When I found out she'd lied, she said I'd misunderstood her. That she'd said she was afraid of getting cancer, not that she had it. All 3 women had similar stories. Patricia targeted them, lied about them, and tried to destroy them. When they fought back, Patricia played the victim so convincingly that people took her side. She's like a predator, Jennifer said. She finds vulnerable people or people who care about her, and she uses them. Then she discards them and moves on to the next victim. We all sat around Rachel's dining table that evening, 7 of us connected by one person's lies. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone or crazy. We need to stop her, I said. Not just for us, but for whoever she targets next. Everyone agreed. I flew back to Portland 2 days later with a plan. Rachel was coming with me. We'd scheduled a family meeting for Sunday evening at Uncle Raymond's house. Everyone would be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Leonard. The only person who wouldn't know what was coming was my mother. I'd also hired a lawyer named Sharon Martinez who specialized in elder abuse and financial fraud. I met with her the day before the family gathering and showed her everything. The credit cards in Leonard's name. The second mortgage. The insurance fraud. The storage unit. The money collected from family members under false pretenses. The blog where she solicited donations based on lies. Sharon reviewed every document carefully. This is a very strong case, she said. Your mother has committed multiple serious crimes. Identity theft, wire fraud, insurance fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Leonard could press charges. Your other family members could too. What I want, I said carefully, is for her to get help. Real help. But I also want her to face consequences. Real consequences. Then we'll give her a choice, Sharon said. Professional treatment in a facility that specializes in her type of disorder, with strict conditions. Or criminal prosecution with all the evidence we have. But Diane, I need you to understand something. People like your mother rarely change, even with intensive treatment. I know, I said. But we have to try. Saturday night my phone rang. It was my mother calling from wherever she'd been hiding for the past week. Diane, sweetie, I've been thinking. Maybe we should have lunch tomorrow. Just the 2 of us. We need to talk about this misunderstanding. Her voice was sweet, loving. Like nothing had happened. I can't tomorrow, Mom. I have plans. Oh. Well, maybe next week. Maybe. Hung up. Tomorrow everything would change. Sunday evening came. Uncle Raymond's house filled up by 5 p.m. Aunt Gloria and her 3 kids. Cousin Marcus and his wife. Uncle Raymond's brothers and their families. Leonard looking nervous and tired. Rachel, who'd flown in that morning. Sharon Martinez, sitting quietly in the corner with her briefcase. And at 5:15 p.m. my mother walked through the front door. She was smiling, carrying a store-bought pie like this was just a normal family dinner. She hugged people as she moved through the room. Then she saw Rachel standing next to me. My mother's face turned completely white. She actually stumbled backward and grabbed the wall for support. Rachel. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Hello, Patricia, Rachel said calmly. My mother looked around the room at all the serious faces. At the lawyer in the corner. At Leonard sitting with his arms crossed. at me standing shoulder to shoulder with Rachel. Understanding slowly dawned on her face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice getting louder. "It's an intervention," I said. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to anger in seconds. "I'm not staying for this nonsense." She turned toward the door. Uncle Raymond stood up and blocked her path. At 65 years old and 6 feet tall, he was an intimidating presence. "Yes, you are, Patricia. Sit down." My mother looked at her older brother, a man she'd manipulated for decades, and must have seen something in his face that scared her. Because she sat down on the couch, her hands shaking. "For the past 2 weeks," I began, "Rachel and I have been investigating you. We've gathered evidence, talked to witnesses, and built a complete picture of what you've been doing. To me, to Rachel, to Leonard, to this entire family, and to other people over the years. For the next hour we presented everything. I started by showing photos of the storage unit on the TV screen. All those designer purses, electronics, and jewelry my mother had claimed were stolen. Then I showed the insurance claim forms proving she'd committed fraud. Rachel stood up next and shared her story. The fake psychiatric evaluation. The disability fraud. The lies told to her fiancé that destroyed her engagement. The years of false accusations that made her change her name and flee across the country. Leonard spoke next, his voice shaking with emotion. He talked about the credit cards he'd never opened. The second mortgage on their house that he knew nothing about. The destroyed credit and retirement savings. "You made me doubt my own memory," he said to my mother. "You told me I was getting forgetful and confused. That's not marriage. That's abuse." One by one, family members shared their experiences. Uncle Raymond talked about his $500. Aunt Gloria about her $1,500. Marcus about his $800. Each story made my mother sink deeper into the couch. Then we played recordings. Jennifer, Susan, and Margaret had all agreed to record statements describing what Patricia had done to them. Their voices filled the room, each one telling a story of lies and manipulation. My mother tried to interrupt several times. "You're all twisting things. I can explain. This is a misunderstanding." But every time she spoke, someone presented evidence that proved she was lying. Finally, Sharon Martinez stood up and opened her briefcase. The room went completely silent. "Mrs. Chen, my name is Sharon Martinez. I'm a family law attorney specializing in elder abuse and financial fraud. Your daughter and your family have brought me in because you've committed multiple felonies." My mother's face went pale. Sharon pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the coffee table. Inside this folder is evidence of identity theft, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Any one of these charges could result in significant prison time. Your family has every right to press charges immediately. My mother's hands were shaking. "You wouldn't dare." "We absolutely would," Leonard said quietly. "Unless you agree to our terms." Sharon opened the folder and pulled out a document. "We've researched treatment facilities that specialize in personality disorders and pathological lying. Clearwater Behavioral Health Center has agreed to accept you into their residential program. Here are the conditions if you choose treatment instead of prosecution." She read from the document. "First, you will enter Clearwater for a minimum of 6 months. Second, you will surrender all financial control to Leonard and a court-appointed monitor. Third, you will pay back every dollar you stole from family members on a monitored payment plan. Fourth, you will have no contact with Diane or Rachel for at least 1 year. Fifth, after your treatment, you will submit to regular check-ins with a therapist approved by this family." "And if I refuse?" my mother asked, her voice barely audible. "Then we file criminal charges tomorrow morning," Sharon said. "All of us. Together. The evidence is overwhelming. You will be convicted." My mother looked around the room desperately, searching for someone who might defend her. There was no one. Even her own brother stood with his arms crossed, his face hard. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I'm your mother, Diane. How can you do this to me? You did this to yourself, Mom, I said. We're giving you a chance to get help. Take it. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Finally, my mother whispered, I'll go to treatment. But her eyes were cold and calculating. I knew this wasn't over. My mother entered Clearwater Behavioral Health Center the next morning. Over the following weeks, the family received updates from her treatment team. The reports weren't encouraging. Week 1. Patient is cooperative in sessions but resistant to accepting responsibility for her actions. Week 3. Patient attempted to convince another client that staff members were mistreating her. This caused distress to a vulnerable individual. Week 5. Patient has been gathering personal information from other clients and using it manipulatively. We've had to separate her from group therapy sessions. 6 weeks after admission, I received a call from Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility director. Ms. Chen, I'm calling because we need to discharge your mother from our program. My heart sank. Why? She's become disruptive to other patients' recovery. She's made false accusations against staff members, which required a full investigation. She convinced 3 patients that we were abusing them. These were vulnerable people in crisis, and your mother's manipulation caused real harm. We can't allow her to continue. So she failed treatment. Yes. And Ms. Chen, I'll be honest with you. In my 20 years doing this work, I've seen many patients with personality disorders make significant progress. But your mother shows no genuine remorse, no real desire to change. She's adapting her manipulation tactics, not stopping them. Some people simply aren't safe to have in your life. When my mother was discharged, she called me immediately. They kicked me out because I stood up for patients who were being mistreated. The staff there is corrupt, Diane. I hung up without responding. The family held another meeting. After hours of discussion, we made a decision. My mother would receive a formal no-contact letter from everyone. If she violated those boundaries or committed fraud again, we would immediately file criminal charges. Leonard filed for divorce. Rachel and I supported him through the process. 3 months later, I made one final decision. I wrote an essay for a major publication telling my story. I used real names and included evidence. The essay went viral, reaching millions of people. My mother responded by starting a new blog, claiming she was the victim. But this time people could see both sides. The truth was finally out there. It's been a year now since that reunion where my mother told everyone I was too ashamed to show my face. Last month, our family held another reunion. My mother wasn't there. Rachel and I attended together. So did Leonard, who was genuinely happy for the first time in years. 25 family members came, free from my mother's manipulation. During dinner, Uncle Raymond raised his glass. To honesty, to healing, and to family. We all toasted. I looked around at the faces of people who finally knew the truth. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table. We made it out, she whispered. Smiled. Yes, we did. And for the first time in my life I felt completely, genuinely free.